Good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today for this NCITE webinar. NCITE is an academic center of excellence grant funded by the Department of Homeland Security to conduct research on terrorism and the efforts used to prevent and mitigate terrorism. As such, the views and conclusions shared today are those of the participants and don't represent the official policies of DHS or its staff. Now, before I begin, I wanted to note that the chat is disabled and that attendees should use the Q&A feature during the session or email insight@unomaha.edu for any unanswered questions for follow-up. The webinar will be recorded and is streaming on YouTube, so you can request to view the webinar recording afterward as well. In today's webinar, we'll take a deep dive into current challenges and areas of opportunity in the threat reporting and analysis domain. Now, getting high quality information to intelligence analysts can be difficult. It requires that people can accurately identify concerning behaviors, provide enough detail for analysts to convene and decide on best courses of action. And the technologies in place don't deter people from sharing their concerns. In short, there's a lot in the chain of events that can go wrong. So joining us today are two esteemed researchers who have been studying the intersection of suspicious activity reporting and technology, along with two experienced State Fusion Center analysts who can provide a window into points of friction they see in practice. Our hope is that today's discussion will prompt the audience to think critically about where in their threat reporting, triage, and analysis workflow improvements could be made, or where more research could be done to inform efforts on those front lines of this work. Without further ado, I'll let the researchers introduce themselves first by providing their name and any relevant background, and then followed by the Fusion Center analysts who are joining us today. All right, Aaron and Joel.
All right, well, I'll kick it off. My name is Dr. Joel Elson, and here at NCITE, I'm the Director of Technology Innovation. My background to this project includes an effort back in 2021 where we were investigating the efficacy and value of looking at chatbot technology, and this was prior to ChatGPT, in integrating that into the suspicious activity reporting process. And so my expertise lies in human trust and human collaboration with AI and intelligence systems. Bringing also some technology development prowess to this group. My team is capable of doing rapid testing, prototype development, so that we were able to explore these new and emerging technologies and understand their impact on SAR. Thanks for having us, Ten.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joel.
All right. Hello. I am Dr. Erin Carnes. I'm faculty in the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice and the Director of Law Enforcement Partnerships here at NCITE. Similar to Joel, though a little different, I have been doing research on the intersection between public trust and law enforcement as it relates to suspicious activity for over a decade now. And the project that Joel mentioned back in 2021 really came from a partnership between the two of us and the direct needs of a stakeholder in Sarpy County Sheriff's Office just south of Omaha, where they knew they were getting information through their platforms, but were concerned about what they were missing and what was deterring people from actually providing those critical information about concerns to the hands then of authorities who can assess and potentially, hopefully mitigate any concerning behavior or violence before it actually happens.
Excellent.
Social scientist without a tech marriage between sort of two different skill sets where the sum is better than the whole of the parts in terms of the work that we're doing.
Thanks, Aaron. Roman and Deepak.
Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Anyway, my name is Roman Acero. I am a crime analyst here at the Nebraska Information Analysis Center, the Nebraska Fusion Center. With that, I'm also a threats analyst. I'm within our threats team. So with that, we have a statewide and Midwest responsibility. With that, we do SAR reporting, SAR triage, and SAR investigations. We also look at threat trends, counterterrorism aspects of the SARS, and we also work with our critical infrastructure in schools within Nebraska to help provide them the best intelligence possible to help prevent any type of targeted violence. I'm also a enter master trainer in their program, and we do a lot in the field of behavioral threat assessment and other type of SAR reporting activities. So
Good morning, everybody. My name is Deepak Cade. I'm a lead intelligence analyst at the Minnesota Fusion Center. I oversee the cyber threat intelligence team, the terrorism team, and the transnational organized crime team. With respect to SAR, our Fusion Center is co-located within the same physical space as our behavioral threat assessment and management team, which follows the hallmarks of the ENTER program, as Roman mentioned. Our parent agency is the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, and all together through our day-to-day stuff, we are looking to um, improve our quality of SAR reception and move forward into the future with modernization of SAR intake and how we can take benefits and positive aspects through the historical SAR process, but also then tweak them to capture what we see in real frontline efforts today.
Perfect. Thanks for this wonderful group for joining us. The first question I have for the group is, what are the biggest limitations of current suspicious activity reporting, otherwise known as SAR, systems in today's threat environment?
So, and from the perspective of before information even gets into the hands of people like Roman and Deepak, one of the biggest concerns is about the assumptions that a person sees something that is suspicious. It tickles their spidey sense. They recognize then that it tickles their spidey sense and that it's something that should be reported to authorities, and then that they're willing and know how to actually provide that information to authorities who are in the position to actually evaluate whether or not there's any follow-up needed, if this is actually a behavior of concern, if the person needs help, etc. So that is, I think, on the front end, one of the biggest challenges.
I'd say from a fusion center perspective, for sure, one of the biggest limitations that we've seen has been reporting in general, coming from Nebraska, that culture that we're seeing right now. People don't like to report. We've all grown up hearing things like, snitches get stitches, things like that. So when you're trying to get some reporting from the general public, that culture, trying to change that mindset that it is okay to report, that not everyone's gonna get in trouble. You're just trying to report something suspicious. As Aaron said, that spidey sense got tingled. Report that you might be stopping something bigger. But there's that culture of not wanting to report, not wanting to give that information to a law enforcement agency or even just a fusion center. And also that understanding the general public that a fusion center that would be receiving the SARS, not knowing what a fusion center is and what a fusion center is doing with that information. So that is a huge limitation we have. And with that comes that public trust and that and knowing how also to access these reporting tools. Where are they? How are they? How do you get to them? How do I submit that information as a member of the public? Or even some smaller law enforcement jurisdictions, how am I going to get that information to a fusion center if I'm not already queued in with them? How can I get that to them is a big limitation that we're seeing here, at least in Nebraska.
And I had to jump off of Roman's commentary. I would say reporting is also a challenge when there are so many mechanisms to report, especially following the typical, like what we see atrocities around the country, like targeted violence or mass shootings. There's a big push from local governments, local law enforcement, state governments, and law enforcement to increase and enhance their suspicious activity or overall tip reporting mechanism. But I think what this has led to is that in some environments, there's an oversaturation of tip reporting mechanisms. For Minnesota specifically, I know a lot of the school systems, the school itself has a tip system, the school district may have a tip system, and then the local law enforcement or the county sheriff's office would have a tip system, and then the state builds to supplement that. The official marketing and messaging that goes around that is that we aim and strive to be force multipliers to give the public and especially juveniles an avenue to report confidently and securely and anonymously, so they aren't tied to one reporting system. But I do think that this may have led to a decrease in overall reporting, or at least the reporting coming back to the Fusion Center itself.
I will jump on here. Although for the host, if you could turn my camera on, apparently it has been disabled system side, which is very fitting for the technologist to have the technology issues. That being said, so this is Joel Elson here. I just want to kind of emphasize on those points that have already been mentioned, but talking about that workflow fragmentation and how with reports entering from so many different possible channels, right? There's often times where intake might need to be deconflicted. Information quality obviously is an issue, and with all these different intakes, that can cause there to be a lack of information integration. Signals can be missed or even delayed. And so here we go, cameras back on. Great, thank you for fixing that. Also, I think there's just so much signal to noise issues related to the analysts themselves needing to determine whether a report is worthy to act on and the information should be acted on.
Great, thank you. The panelists seem to allude to multiple different sources of issues and challenges here, right? So there's a cultural element, obviously. We want to motivate people to actually report. We want people to report the right information. And we also want to make sure that the process isn't so cumbersome, right? That it deters them either from a technological standpoint or from kind of a workflow unifying standpoint, right? And in light of that, given that there are so many barriers in the way of public reporting, what can we maybe do to make that process easier for folks?
Yeah, I think some of it comes from, certainly the cultural issues that we have discussed, technology issues. There also can be, we did the early project that Joel and I talked about from 2021. We did some national surveys just trying to assess what are other barriers to reporting that might exist. And some of the things that we found, certainly, if you can't report anonymously, people are less likely to report. That there's also the fear of, oh, this probably isn't a big deal and I don't want to waste someone's time. Was something that came up quite a bit that we hadn't really seen largely discussed in the literature before that. And it was really, I think, part of the impetus of, like I mentioned, Joel and I mentioned the chatbot that we developed that is, it is conversational, but it's not a person. And that's actually been launched in Ohio with Safeguard Ohio. And they've actually seen a huge increase in both the number of tips. I think it's about an 850% increase in the number of tips they've received since implementing that, and also a huge increase in the quality of information that was provided. So I think there's some sort of evidence that at least for some segments of the population, having these conversational online tech platforms can improve the information to the professionals who can then assess it.
I think to highlight some of the challenges and hesitation from general public, if we start with that area and that community as a reporting body, is bridging that gap and building that trust back up with both fusion centers and law enforcement in general. I could speak for fusion centers as a whole. I know one of our core pillars is making sure everything is done with adherence to privacy and civil liberties, but also recognizing various other constitutional rights. When it comes to like the traditional DHS NSI SAR reporting, a lot of the training and a lot of the early messaging is on the co-occurrence of indicators. So it's not just a change in wardrobe, it's not just a change in religion or specific activity. It's a confluence of all of those things that, if observed, are then brought into a quote unquote law enforcement investigation. And I think that that nuance is difficult to convey through traditional means, billboard advertising or gas station pump advertising, TV commercials. So it does, to a degree, go back to the old school, just go on a road show and go meet and engage with the community, or at least at the Fusion Center level, for analysts like Roman and I with private sector, critical infrastructure partners to get that reporting.
From
I
the
can
yeah, go ahead, Roman, and then I'll chime in here on the follow-up.
Sorry, no, I was gonna just piggyback off what Deepak said. Yeah, it's all in getting out there on that road show. I know here in the NIAC, that is a big amount of what we do. We get out, we talk with our agencies across the state, our law enforcement agencies, our private sector, our schools. We get in there, we host quarterly meetings, we talk on SAR reporting, we do education on SAR reporting. It's just a lot of getting it out there to help change that culture and show them how they can get here. And going off what Aaron said with anonymizing reporting tools, we actually have a public facing reporting tool that didn't see much action, honestly. To completely upfront and transparent, didn't see much action until this past summer when we added an anonymizing option on there where they can actually click it and say, I don't want to be associated with this at all. And it takes all their information off and sends it to us. We have seen a big increase in the amount of public SARs since that point in time. So these things do help, and those are some barriers if you don't have those in your SAR reporting. If you're not getting out there and talking and putting the boots on the ground and discussing this with people, and not having that ability to report anonymously.
So I'll chime in with maybe some of the technology angle, and I think we were encouraged to see that having a reporting modality that differed from traditional web forms, seeing this huge impact on an uptick of number of reports there in Ohio. I think it speaks to this broader trend of the need to really think about very carefully the interface that is being deployed. Not only that, but the types of questions that those interfaces are soliciting. Sometimes they put too much cognitive burden on the reporter, asking them to self-identify or categorize the type of information that is about to be reported when, quite honestly, when we engage with experts, they might even have some uncertainty about what exactly a certain type of report, what category that might fall into. Furthermore, it's about kind of making the whole process very intuitive. And so existing forms, if they're online forms, they often have not been optimized using user interface design standards. And that costs a little bit more, but the payoff is that you get this increased usability, willingness to engage with the system. And finally, just recognizing that it's not going to be a one-size-fit-all solution, right? That we recognize that there are cultural and different just reasons that individuals prefer, be it through their age or their generational differences. One might prefer conversational chat interfaces, while another group might prefer more application phone-based interfaces, where yet another might prefer a phone call, right? And so recognizing the spectrum of how information is brought in will continue to exist.
Thanks, all. Yeah, so you touched on a number of really important points. The first of which being, there's a socialization process and education that needs to happen in the public and with frontline professionals in order to actually get that information or get those concerning behaviors noticed and reported to begin with. And then there's also that technological element that Joel was alluding to. And I know a lot of different fusion centers and a lot of different jurisdictions have a variety of different reporting mechanisms. So again, the technologies vary quite a bit. So I'm kind of curious, what lessons have fusion centers and law enforcement agencies learned from implementing some of these technology-enabled reporting systems, whether it be chatbots or texts or different phone lines, any of the above?
Been trying to mess with my audio. Can everybody still hear me? Okay, hopefully it's a little better. Um, I can say, at least speaking a little candidly, state government, it takes a long time to get things moving and changed. So we are still using, like, I guess, the traditional public-facing tip reporting system. One thing our parent agency has done and is kind of in the process of modernizing is there's been multiple different avenues to submit a tip or a SAR. This is also to address the concerns about accessibility. Not everybody has access to a phone. Not everybody has access to the internet. So we have to address that. So we have a phone number, we have a website, we have a tip app where people can submit, and each one offers a different level of anonymity um, for the responding party. And it has its challenges because depending on what platform is being used to submit a tip, it may route through different channels to get to the Fusion Center, or it may not offer the reporting party all the nuances and the ability to like fine tweak their reporting submission. Um, because you have to deal with drop downs or free text box, and a lot of it does rely back on the analyst who is reviewing it to extrapolate what is actually helpful and useful information.
I can say for our fusion center here, I agree with Deepak completely on what you're saying and how they were working on it. Our parent agency, it takes a while to get these things, new technology. We start talking AI and such like that. It takes a while to get that into motion with state government. It just moves at that pace, especially as we're still learning about AI. America as a whole is still a little bit behind when it comes to AI, especially when we start talking Midwest law enforcement agencies. Very behind when it comes to AI, trusting it, understanding it, how it works. So the process is a little bit slower. But as we start looking into that, we have found that the accessibility is a big thing for us as well. What we did was our parent agency being the state patrol, we just went ahead and put our SAR reporting tool on our website. So as people are looking, how can I report this? Oh, well, I'm going to look up the Nebraska State Patrol. They get on there, see report of suspicious activity, and they can report it directly to us as well. It's that outreach. We talk with all these different agencies and across the state, and they get something suspicious in that they can't do anything with. It's not an active crime, but it's that spidey sense is going off. They're going to shoot us an email. They're going to call us. They're going to get it to us however they can. It comes in through all these different avenues, as Deepak was saying. We're in with our dispatch because our parent agency is law enforcement, so our dispatch will send us things if it's coming in on the non-emergency lines and it's just a suspicious activity. So we're just queuing in, kind of just getting out there and more of a numbers game. More people that we can contact to get it into us, we'll get it that way. So that's as we're looking. And one of the biggest lessons with that is we look at trying to still follow our 28 CFR Part 23. That is a big guiding law for fusion centers. It's one of our biggest ones, and it's just protecting those civil liberties. So we don't want to violate any civil liberties while we're doing this. That is one of the biggest I wouldn't say it's lessons we haven't ever violated, but it's something that we keep in mind when we do everything we're doing is we maintain those civil liberties. So
And then a quick follow-up before I pass it off to the researchers to answer. There's a question from one of the audience members that I think might be relevant to this conversation here. For Deepak and Roman, do you have any insight into the quality of the increased reports that you've seen after anonymizing the reporting process? And is that resulting in a higher percentage of SARs that are appropriate or actionable?
I can speak to that very briefly. We have, I think, from its inception, our SAR reporting process has always been marketed as anonymous. to increase reporting, and that is the ultimate goal. I think this goes back to the challenge I mentioned when we began this discussion for Minnesota specifically. There are so many different avenues to report tips, and the one of like the foundations of our parent agency is that we operate as a for assist law enforcement agency. So we do have a investigative capacity, like the sworn agents in our agency, but it's primarily to assist local and county law enforcement. So that is usually where the majority of tips within Minnesota go because they're going to be actioned quicker and within the jurisdiction. When we do get reporting anonymously, I think it does benefit when we're targeting houses of worship, communities of faith, and schools because those are typically a little more sensitive, both because they may know the people that they're reporting, or there may be certain extenuating circumstances that want them to report to a state law enforcement.
Great, thank you. And then for Aaron Carnes or Joel Elson, what other lessons do you think people could take away from the implementation of technology-enabled reporting systems based on your own research?
That's a great question, Tim. One of the things that we recently conducted was an analysis of what the actual SAR reporting platforms look like for every fusion center in the country, where we had some of our wonderful graduate students go through each of those platforms and collect information such as, how easy is it this to access, how user-friendly is this, what questions are being asked, what questions are being required. And what we saw is quite a bit of variation from state to state on this. For example, we're here in Omaha. For those of you who are familiar with middle of the country geography, we are a stone's throw from Iowa, just across the Missouri River. And yet the two states have vastly different ways of collecting this information. So something that we're about to collect some data on is actually doing a national experiment where we show people a hypothetical suspicious video, and then we'll randomize the different ways that they can report web form or a chatbot, and also some of the which questions are asked, which questions are required, which then allows us to actually empirically validate which questions are eliciting the most accurate information while increasing inaccuracies in reporting.
Yeah, I think the only thing to add to all of this conversation, right, is so far we've been talking a lot about digital intake, and in theory, right, that could be just the tip of the iceberg, right? So then you have following that a whole host of challenges. I think just for awareness, right, it's that responsible triage, validation, information sharing between correct individuals who are on those response teams. And then learning lessons from all of this and implementing those into improving the reporting process across the reporting lifecycle. I think it's a lot of hard problems, but we're really enthused to be working on these, and the study that Carnes just shared is just an example of that.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that the research process is so slow, but I think it's important that research is being done to understand what gets people to provide more accurate information from any activities that they're seeing. I think that's a really important bit there. I know Roman alluded to this notion of AI. I know there's a lot of AI hype, and people are trying to integrate it into their workflows as much as possible in a variety of different sectors. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the risks that might emerge when organizations are adopting some of these AI tools without clear governance frameworks. So could any of the practitioners speak to that? And then we'll jump to the researchers after that.
Well, we don't use any AI based. I think we've been looking at it as a possibility. I think there are hesitations, as Roman said, both from legislative side, like our agency, I know would prefer to have policies in place at the legislative level to implement any kind of AI and to have those guardrails set in so everybody from elected officials to law enforcement are all on the same side on how we are supposed to use this emerging technology. I think recently there's been some negative press when it comes to public safety and AI, specifically to, I think, an act of targeted violence where an individual interacted with an artificial intelligence resource to try to develop tactics to use targeted violence. I think that's one of our hesitations, I guess, is like if we did implement any kind of tip reporting system that had AI, would there be a back and forth? Would there be a human check involved to say like, hey, we want to intercede at this point? We are 24/7, so we do have that capability to do that. It's just, I think a lot of it also depends on our education of the technology at hand and becoming more familiar and incorporating that into the policies in place.
I can piggyback off that. When it comes to AI and SAR reporting, we don't use that at the moment. Same hesitation. We want to see something from our legislative saying yes or no. We haven't really looked at it too much for our SAR reporting, as we want to make sure we're getting the reporting from them organically. We don't want to seem like we're coercing anything towards them. We want them to be able to disengage when they want to disengage. And as we know, some chatbots, it does continue to keep going and such like that. So we when we look at that, really the risks are we don't want to violate, again, those civil liberties, 28 CFR Part 23, and we worry about where's that data going when it comes in. What's the AI going to do with that? Is it protected? Is it just out there? So these are some of the questions that we have. So, like moving forward with AI without any type of clear framework from the government, it's something that most fusion centers, I can speak for my own, I don't like to speak for others, but aren't going to move forward without some type of legislative process.
Yeah, there's legislative concerns. There's also the need for more research to be done on the efficacy of some of these practices in experimental contexts and then also in field-based contexts. And we're seeing ever so slowly some of that at the moment. I'll kick it off to Joel, our technology expert here. What kind of governance structures or what kind of ways can we kind of build the technologies so that we can actually have guardrails on AI so that it doesn't feel coercive for folks or embedded into other aspects of the workflow aside from just the reporting element of things?
Yeah, let me let me touch on just a few points with your prior question, then I'm going to come into this. I think it's important to highlight some of the risks with generative AI, and when groups are implementing this, at the state local level, right? One is we have to acknowledge that there are definite, human tendencies to potentially overtrust or overuse these AI tools, and that can cause, for example, both on the individual interacting from the community side who's doing reporting, they might have experiences that are not necessarily tailored to the way we would like those to go. And so the tools that people are implementing, you need to make sure that they're very, strategically vetted and looked at so that when you bring those on and they're representing the face of your organization, that they're doing so in a way that you can have confidence in. Furthermore, as these tools start to help to advise kind of in the evaluation of these reports as they come in, we must, retrain ourselves and get this expertise and how do we collaborate with AI tools so that they actually enhance our decision making rather than, possibly allow us to false prey to some of the biases that can be injected into the process by us over trusting them. And then the third category of just risks that emerge when we're using these tools relate to some of the exploitation attacks that can occur when individuals in the community want to do things like a denial of wallet attack, which is to just overwhelm the community-facing tool, knowing that there's AI behind it, so that costs and other financial harm or even downtime, making the tool unavailable. And so you have to make sure that the people who are implementing these reporting technologies are able to speak to these threats and these cognitive issues equally as you're evaluating those before implementing them into your communities. In terms of building responsible AI technology, right? It's very critical to understand what is the core language model behind the tool or the resource being deployed. Some of these have gone through greater vetting of initial training material, which helps us to have confidence that the tool itself won't be providing unintentional guidance on how to carry out an attack or create a weapon. We want these training materials, the guardrails, to be from reputable models, and we want to know where those models originated, what was their training source, information like that. And a vendor of this technology should be able to speak to that and talk to you about that very clearly.
The only thing I have to add is that as a not particularly tech-savvy social scientist, it's been immensely helpful speaking with Joel and his team, who can really translate a lot of the technological sort of jargon, if you will, into English, basically understandable English for the masses, to understand sort of what these huge, constraints are and how to place them on any sort of AI technology, so that there are safeguards for the work that we're doing.
Yeah, and even with technologies that are relatively commonplace, I think a big question lies in the implementation of some of these technologies and how you go about that process, and how you evaluate the efficacy of those technologies once you actually implement them. So for all the folks on the panel, how should agencies actually evaluate whether a new technology improves suspicious activity reporting outcomes, whether it be a chatbot, a new text line that has revised questions, a web form that people have never used before? What are ways that people can actually ensure that those are working the way that they want to? What are some key metrics that you might use?
Great question, Tin. And some of the things just to think about are looking at year-to-year changes. There's going to be just natural seasonality or fluctuation in reporting in general, but seeing where there are year-to-year changes, being able to evaluate the amount of information that was provided pre and post any sort of intervention or change. Trying not to speak too much like an evaluation researcher right now. Also looking at the quality of that information. So, while there's a tendency perhaps to think like how many things did we prevent? That's a really basically unknowable number. But assessing what information is received pre and post intervention is one great way of evaluating this in the real world. And I'll say for any agencies who are like, well, we have this data, but we don't know how to analyze it, that's where we come in. We're happy to help.
Yeah, I might chime in and add then to make analysis easier, right? I think some metrics to look for is how many people begin to fill out reports and then fail to complete them, right? And so a lot of systems that are deployed across the country, they sure do a great job of maybe capturing that report, but they might not do such a great job at capturing what was did the report fail to submit? Did people answer through question 3 and then they bailed or got nervous or stepped away or decided not to report at that time? It's very important to understand the process of the human as they are engaging with this technology in order so that we can make changes and improvements on it. Some other measures I think that are really, really critical is to engage your analyst workforce and to ask them, was the burden of analyzing these reports improved by these new technology decisions that we decided to implement? If we are just increasing the information without improving the process for the analysts, I think we might not have necessarily succeeded as much as we would like. And then outcomes, right? Just measuring outcomes in general, right? Are the tools helping us to make measurable progress in keeping our communities safe? Were there interventions that were successful? These are the things that come to mind for me.
Roman or Deepak?
Um, I agree with Joel. I think a big way of just seeing how this is impacting our SARs is talk to your analyst. I'm an analyst. I deal with SARs every day. First thing I do in the morning, last thing I do before I go home at night. Um, Talk with your analyst. They're going to know what that impact is on SARs. How much are you seeing? What's coming in? What's the quality of that? Really evaluating it through your analysts will know. They're going to know the nitty gritty of what's going on. Your analysts are the boots on the ground, front lines when it comes to SAR reporting, and conferring with them would be a great way to kind of understand how that is impacting.
If I can, take some of the liberty and put my academic hat back on from days when I was back in school, I think looking at the empirical efficacy of some of the questions or some of these SAR criteria would be step one to improving the technology of it. For our SAR reporting, we have I think 12 NSI SAR categories. But if I put myself in the shoes of the public reporting it, was what I'm reporting actually captured in the word that is used? For our Fusion Center, uh, we are right now using those DHS NSI SAR categories. Uh, we have talked about enhancing them or adding specific activity that we see or want to capture and measure in Minnesota. But how do we do that? Can we just throw a word out there to describe the activity? Or should it have some kind of empirical backing to say this is actually the wording and the phrasing that you want to use to capture and increase reporting? And then add that to the SAR or TIP reporting mechanism. Is there actually a benefit to having a drop-down menu so public or critical infrastructure partner can only select those type of suspicious activities to limit the amount of noise and junk submissions? Or do we open it up like free text so people can be nuanced when they're reporting the activity? Because maybe the traditional definitions that we are used to, both in academia and in law enforcement, don't actually properly capture what somebody is seeing out on the street. This doesn't even address the whole idea and topic of cyber SAR reporting, which I know is a category if people are familiar with the traditional SAR mechanisms, but I think that is a whole nother layer, maybe a future topic on how to capture cyber SAR reporting.
Yeah, as a fellow social scientist, I really appreciate that some of the technology solutions that we're discussing here are really low fidelity, right? As simple as let's figure out how to ask these questions appropriately and structure the way that people are inputting this information into the different systems that they're using. In the interest of time, one final point that I want all of the panelists to touch on. We have a great comment from an audience member that says that they're using AI to link data points on data sets that they need to be able to consolidate or control, and they're having a lot of success with it. Obviously, it requires still some human review, but there seems to be some efficiency that's gained there, according to their perspective. So, with that knowledge of AI having the potential to support other elements of the suspicious activity reporting and also maybe triage and analysis, or at least data consolidation process, what future opportunities do you kind of see for AI integration into some of these workflows, assuming that legislation makes its way in favor of some of these technologies?
So assuming legislation is in place, step one would be for us, we would want to get a AI client, but have it like within our system, behind our firewall, to the commenter's point, to give them access to internal data points. We couldn't have the AI inquiry leave our system or come from an external source into our system to cross-reference internal data. Would be a CJIS, Criminal Justice Information System requirement. It would be a 28 CFR requirement to restrict that AI platform. I know it's been done by other public safety agencies where they purchase, showing my age a little bit, like if you had Garmin navigation, you used to download that navigation packet or put it on a CD-ROM, and that would be what you base navigation mapping on, it would be the same way for AI analysis of information. Like we would have to retain a model that was trained, to Dr. Elson's point, properly, and then use that um, to benefit us. I think something where we would trip is that if we were creating a bias by just using our own data, if there was an opportunity to use Nebraska's data or like regionally specific data to cross-reference that with stripping out personally identifiable information and just looking at the tactics involved, I think that's where the future of tip and suspicious activity reporting would be.
I agree with Deepak on that. Again, coming to AI, assuming the legislation is in place. First, he said behind the firewalls, the biggest concern is protecting the data, protecting all of our internal data. So make sure it's behind the firewalls, it's not vulnerable, right? After that, after you've secured that vulnerability, hopefully, the best that you can would be using it and training it on that data set that it would help pick up on these SAR indicators and such here. We would like to see it if we were to do something of that sort to help, like, essentially not triage because we want the human oversight, but help us, let us know, hey, which one do you need to get to first? Maybe rank them, add in those SAR indicators, such like that, getting that data set and letting us know what's more concerning, where are the imminence, where is that imminence at? So I could see it going down that route here in Nebraska. But again, legislation needs to be in place and we need to understand it much more before we can actually set that type of tool in place.
Those are great points. And those are things that Jolton and I have been thinking about and working on this year. Joel and his team have developed some prototype dashboards that would help with this process of, to your point, Roman, of, sort of ranking or giving a percentage of threat and then confidence percentages. For anyone on the call who works in a fusion center, we'll have a survey out next month asking people in fusion centers to give feedback on some of these prototypes. So would appreciate your participation in that. It's quite short, about 10-15 minutes. And I'll let Joel speak to some of the more technological aspects of those platforms.
Yeah, so building on Deepak, what you were saying, I think geopatriation is a major trend towards the future of AI, having AI on edge, having AI within a controlled environment that is ensuring data protection is really, really key. I think digital provenance is a new term that I think people are going to start to hear more and more about, but this is from an acquisition of technology standpoint. We want to know where it came from, who or what created it, right? And how has it been changed and developed over time so that we can ensure the integrity of the data that is being collected and interacted with these systems. All really, really critical here. As we think starting even further down the road, not only are systems going to be assisting, AI systems going to be assisting with the collection and intake, but they're going to be assisting with the analysis, and that has already started to begin. But this requires active retraining and rethinking of entire processes and workflows. So just because in the past where there was this manual progression, steps 1 through 5 or 1 through 10, that doesn't mean with AI that has to continue to be the case, right? There can be automatic notifications with using agents and other technologies, automatic reach outs to, specialists in different areas to bring them onto a particular case or a particular thing that has been reported. And all that can be automated now. And so I think it's really leaning in, encouraging our partners and encouraging everyone to lean into how can AI actually help us to achieve more and to do more as long as it's being deployed responsibly. And I think we've done some initial mapping to future technologies where sensors and cameras are going to allow for this facilitated ingest of information once again, if done responsibly, if done following the letter of the law of where they're being deployed. But the opportunities for AI, I think, are quite broad. They are across the entire SAR lifecycle. And we are really encouraged to be leaning in and can definitely be a resource to people as they have ideas or they would like to be connected or would like some analysis done. I think to Carnes's point, we've been thinking about it for a long time now, and we are thinking about the next 5 to 10 years already and have done a tremendous amount of work there as well.
Yeah, and it sounds like it takes a lot of rigorous research and development in order to actually build these AI systems in a way that is responsible and is ethical and does respect those rights and civil liberties of the folks that are reporting. Um, Obviously, there are some efficiencies that could be embedded into the workflow, but I think to the Fusion Center analyst points earlier, right? You know, ultimately, we still want to keep or preserve that structured professional judgment that a lot of the practitioners are exercising throughout that process. So with that, I know we are running up on time. So there are some unanswered questions in the chat still. Please forward those if you would like them answered to insight@unomaha.edu. And then from there, we'll be able to respond or send those questions to whomever the intended responder might be. But thanks everyone for joining us on this wonderful webinar and for all of your participation and comments in the Q&A. Much appreciated.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.